The bargain. Alexander Reed stared at the Manhattan skyline from his penthouse office, the golden sunset glinting off his steel-framed glasses. The board meeting had gone exactly as he'd feared. 20 years building Horizon Innovations from nothing, and now they wanted to replace him because of a few tabloid headlines. "Your personal life is affecting stock prices," his COO had explained, sliding the Gossip magazines across the polished table. "3 different women in 4 months, Alexander. The conservative investors are nervous." He loosened his tie with a frustrated sigh. At 38, he'd conquered the tech world, but couldn't seem to manage his public image. His last relationship had ended spectacularly when she'd sold unflattering stories about his workaholic tendencies to the press. Now the board wanted him settled and stable within 3 months, or they'd vote him out of his own company. The elevator in his building pinged softly as Alexander descended to the lobby. He needed air, needed to think. That's when he noticed her, Maya Chen, the building superintendent, kneeling beside an elderly resident's walker, fixing something with deft fingers. "There you go, Mrs. Kaplan. Good as new," Maya said, her voice gentle as she helped the woman test the repaired wheel. Alexander had seen her around for months, but rarely paid attention. Now he noticed her practical efficiency, the quiet competence in her movements, and most importantly, her complete disinterest in his presence. No fawning, no sidelong glances. A refreshing change. An idea formed in his mind, outrageous and desperate, but possibly brilliant. Later that evening, a leak in his bathroom provided the perfect excuse. When Maya arrived with her toolbox, she was all business. Dark hair pulled back in a practical bun, simple work clothes that couldn't hide her natural grace. "The problem should be under the sink," he said, as he watched her assess the situation. "It'll take about 20 minutes to fix," she replied without looking up. "I'll try not to disturb you." "Actually, I have a proposition for you, Miss Chen." She straightened slowly, wariness crossing her features. "It's just Maya, and I'm only qualified to fix your plumbing, Mr. Reed. This is about something else entirely." He gestured toward his living room. "Perhaps we could discuss it after you've finished the repair?" Suspicion flickered across her face, but curiosity won out. "Fine." 30 minutes later, they sat across from each other, Maya perched cautiously on the edge of his leather sofa. "I need a wife," Alexander stated bluntly. Maya's dark eyes widened. "Excuse me?" "Temporarily," he clarified, sliding a folder across the coffee table. "A contract marriage. 6 months. Possibly a year." She didn't touch the folder. "Is this some kind of joke?" "I assure you it's not. My board of directors is threatening to remove me unless I demonstrate stability in my personal life. The tabloids have been unkind." "And you think marrying your superintendent is the solution?" Disbelief colored her voice. "I think marrying someone who has no interest in my money or power might be." Alexander leaned forward. "The arrangement would be mutually beneficial. You'd have a generous monthly allowance, plus a substantial payment when we divorce. Completely confidential, of course." She laughed, the sound surprisingly warm in his minimalist apartment. "You don't know anything about me. I know you work 2 jobs, building superintendent by day, and..." He hesitated. "Something else in the evenings. I've seen you leaving in scrubs." Her expression hardened. "You've been watching me?" "Observing. There's a difference." Maya finally opened the folder, her eyes widening at the figures listed. "This is fair compensation for the inconvenience." He interrupted. "Your sister is in college, correct? This would cover her tuition and then some." She looked up sharply. "How did you—" "I do my research," Alexander shrugged. "The contract includes separate living arrangements. We'd only appear together when necessary.
social functions, board meetings. You'd maintain your privacy. Maya stood up abruptly. I'm not desperate enough to sell myself, Mr. Reed. I'm not asking you to sell anything, he replied evenly. I'm proposing a business arrangement between two consenting adults. Nothing physical is expected or required. She moved toward the door, but hesitated. Alexander watched the internal battle play across her expressive face, principle warring with practicality. Why me? She finally asked. You could hire an actress, or find someone from your social circle. Because you're real, he answered simply. You're hardworking, responsible, and completely unimpressed by me. The perfect antidote to my public image as a playboy who only dates models. Maya's phone chimed. She glanced at it, her expression softening with worry, before hardening into resolve. I'll consider it, she said finally, but I have conditions of my own. Alexander felt the first genuine smile in weeks tug at his lips. I wouldn't expect anything less.
Unexpected feelings. Your 4 o'clock is here, Alexander's assistant announced through the intercom. He glanced up from his laptop with a frown. He didn't recall any appointments, and his calendar was suspiciously empty. Likely his assistant's doing, her subtle way of forcing him to leave the office at a reasonable hour. The door opened before he could respond, and Maya walked in, looking distinctly uncomfortable in the corporate environment. Maya, Alexander rose from his chair, genuinely surprised. In the 2 months since their arrangement began, she had never visited his office. Is something wrong? She need to speak with you. Her voice was tight, controlled, privately. He nodded to his assistant, who quietly closed the door behind her. It's Sarah, Maya said as soon as they were alone, referring to her younger sister. She's in the hospital. Her heart condition? It's worse. The doctors are recommending a specialist in Boston, but insurance won't cover it, and I can't... She broke off, visibly struggling to maintain composure. Alexander moved around his desk. What do you need? I don't want your money, she said quickly, pride stiffening her spine. That's not why I'm here, but I need to go to Boston with her. It might be weeks, maybe months. I can't maintain our appearances during that time. Understanding dawned. You're worried about the contract. Yes. No. She ran her hair through her hair, loosening it from its careful arrangement. I don't know. This arrangement matters to you. Your company? Sit down, he instructed gently, guiding her to the leather sofa in the corner of his office. To his surprise, she didn't resist. Now, what hospital is Sarah in? 30 minutes later, they were walking into Mount Sinai Hospital. Alexander had made a series of calls in the car, speaking in the authoritative tone Maya had only heard him use in business settings. Dr. Patel will meet us in the cardiac unit, he explained, guiding her through corridors with unexpected familiarity. Maya stopped abruptly. Alexander, I can't accept... This isn't charity, Maya. His voice was surprisingly gentle. Consider it an adjustment to our contract. Before she could respond, they reached Sarah's room. The young woman lying in the hospital bed looked like a younger version of Maya. Same determined chin, same expressive eyes, now widened in surprise at seeing her sister, accompanied by Alexander Reed. You must be Sarah, Alexander said, his usual corporate stiffness noticeably absent. Maya's told me about you. She hasn't told me enough about you, apparently, Sarah replied with a weak smile, her gaze moving curiously between them. Maya moved to her sister's side, explaining the situation in low tones while Alexander stepped into the hallway to speak with the approaching doctor. Later that evening, after Sarah had been prepped for transfer and sedated for the night, Maya found Alexander in the hospital waiting room, tie loosened, sleeves rolled up, looking strangely at home beneath the harsh fluorescent lights. "Why are you still here?" she asked, exhaustion evident in every line of her body. "I thought you might need a ride home?" He glanced up from his tablet. "I meant the hospital. You've been here for hours. Your company will survive without me for one evening." He closed the tablet case with a decisive click. "You need rest. The medical transport leaves at 7 a.m. I haven't packed. I need to arrange coverage for my shifts. Talk to the building manager about my superintendent duties." "Already handled," Alexander said, standing. "Your shifts are covered. Your building manager informed. There's a car waiting to take us to my penthouse where you can rest before tomorrow." Maya stared at him.
Why are you doing this? Something vulnerable flickered across his usual composed features. My mother died of heart failure when I was 12. My father was too busy building his company to notice the symptoms until it was too late. He looked away. The doctors said earlier intervention might have saved her. The confession hung in the air between them, more intimate than any physical touch they had shared for the benefit of photographers or curious observers. I didn't know, Maya said softly. It's not something I discuss. He met her eyes again. Let me help, Maya, not because of our contract, but because I can. In the quiet hospital corridor, Maya did something neither of them expected. She stepped forward and embraced him, her arms wrapping around his waist, her head resting against his chest. After a moment of surprise, his arms encircled her, and they stood together in wordless understanding. 3 weeks later, Maya sat beside Sarah's hospital bed in Boston, reading aloud from her sister's textbook. Sarah insisted on keeping up with her pre-med studies despite her recovery. "You should take a break," came a familiar voice from the doorway. Maya looked up, startled to see Alexander leaning against the frame, casual in jeans and a sweater, a look she had never seen on him before. "Alexander, what are you doing here?" "Board meeting at MIT," he explained, stepping into the room. "Thought I'd check on my favorite Chens." Sarah grinned. "He's been visiting every week, sis. Didn't he tell you?" Maya's surprised gaze met Alexander's almost sheepish one. "No, he didn't." Later, walking through the hospital gardens, Maya confronted him. "You've been coming to Boston every week?" "The company jet makes it convenient," he said, as if it were nothing. "For 6-hour round trips? To visit my sister?" Alexander stopped walking, turning to face her. "To visit both of you." The autumn breeze caught Maya's hair, sending strands across her face. Without thinking, Alexander reached out to brush them away, his fingers lingering against her cheek. "I miss you," he admitted, the words seemingly surprising him as much as her. Maya's heart stuttered in her chest. "That wasn't part of our arrangement." "No," he agreed softly. "It wasn't." Their eyes held, the pretense of their contract marriage suddenly paper-thin against the reality of whatever had grown between them. Alexander leaned closer, hesitating just a breath away from her lips, giving her the chance to pull away. She didn't. The kiss was gentle at first, tentative, nothing like the perfunctory pecks they had shared for cameras or curious observers. Then Maya's hands moved to his shoulders, and Alexander drew her closer, deepening the kiss with a hunger that startled them both. When they finally separated, Maya's expression was troubled. "This complicates things." Alexander tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, his touch lingering. "I've built my career on solving complications, and creating some along the way," she reminded him, though she made no move to step back from his embrace. "True," he acknowledged with the hint of a smile, "but some complications are worth the risk." As they walked back toward the hospital, their hands found each other, fingers intertwining in a gesture too private to be for show, too natural to be denied, and too dangerous to fully trust in a relationship built on a contract they neither anticipated breaking.
Beyond contract. 1 year later, Maya adjusted the stethoscope around her neck as she walked through the bright corridors of the Reed Chen Cardiac Care Center in Brooklyn. Sunlight streamed through the large windows, a deliberate design choice that Alexander had insisted upon. "Healing spaces should never feel institutional," he'd said during the planning stages. The center represented the perfect fusion of their worlds, his business acumen and resources, combined with her medical knowledge and compassion. In the months since its opening, they had already treated hundreds of patients who would otherwise have fallen through the cracks of the healthcare system. Mrs. Patel's results came back. A young nurse informed Maya, handing her a tablet. "Dr. Abrams wants your opinion on the treatment plan." Maya nodded, reviewing the data as she walked. Though she'd returned to nursing full-time, her role had expanded. She now helped oversee patient care protocols across the center, implementing the approaches she'd always believed in but never had the authority to establish. Her phone vibrated with a message from Alexander. "Meeting running late. Save me a seat at Sarah's ceremony?" Maya smiled, typing back a quick affirmative. Sarah's white coat ceremony at medical school marked the culmination of her recovery and years of hard work, a moment neither Chen's sister had been certain would arrive during those dark days in Boston. As Maya finished her rounds,
She found herself in the center's East Wing, the pediatrics section that Alexander had been particularly focused on. She paused at the playroom doorway, watching as children with various stages of heart conditions built elaborate block structures and created artwork. "Nurse Maya," a small voice called. 8-year-old Lily waved enthusiastically from her wheelchair. "Look what I made!" Maya crossed to the child, admiring the colorful drawing. "Is that your heart?" Lily nodded solemnly. Mr. Reed explained how the doctors fixed it. "See the special part?" She pointed to a carefully drawn patch in red crayon. "It's beautiful," Maya said sincerely. "May I take a picture to show him?" After capturing the artwork, Maya continued to her office, a modest space she'd insisted upon, despite Alexander's attempts to give her something more elaborate. On her desk sat a framed photo from their second wedding, a small, genuine ceremony on the rooftop garden of their new brownstone in Park Slope. No photographers, no business associates, just their closest friends and family, beneath string lights and a summer sunset. Next to it stood a simple glass vase holding a single red rose, Alexander's daily reminder of their journey. Not the elaborate bouquets he could easily afford, but one perfect bloom. A tradition that had begun during her first week at the clinic in Queens, when he had finally found her. "Penny for your thoughts?" came his voice from the doorway. Maya looked up, still feeling the small thrill that accompanied his presence. Alexander had changed in subtle ways over the past year, his posture less rigid, his smiles more frequent, his eyes softer when they rested on her. The ruthless CEO remained when circumstances demanded, but he no longer hid behind that persona. "Just thinking about how far we've come," she replied, rising to greet him with a kiss. His arms encircled her waist, holding her close for a moment longer than necessary. "From contract to commitment?" she corrected, smoothing his slightly rumpled tie. "From strangers to partners. How was the board meeting?" "Productive. They've approved funding for 3 more centers across the state." He glanced at his watch. "We should go if we're going to make it to Sarah's ceremony." As they walked through the center toward the parking garage, Alexander nodded and greeted staff by name. Something the old Alexander Reed would never have bothered with. Maya watched him stop to kneel beside a worried-looking boy waiting with his mother, speaking in low, reassuring tones until the child smiled. "What?" Alexander asked when he caught her watching. "Nothing," Maya said, taking his hand as they continued walking. "Just remembering the man who told me love was an inefficient use of emotional resources." Alexander laughed. "I was an idiot." "You were protecting yourself," she countered gently. "We both were." In the car, as they navigated Brooklyn traffic toward the medical school, Alexander reached across the console to take her hand. "I've been thinking about something." "Dangerous," Maya teased. "Should I be concerned?" His expression grew serious. "What would you think about expanding our family?" Maya's breath caught. They had discussed children in abstract terms, but never with any specificity or timeline. "Are you asking if I want to have a baby?" she clarified, her heart suddenly racing. "I'm asking if we want to have a baby, or adopt, or foster. I'm open to all possibilities." He glanced at her before returning his eyes to the road. "Seeing you with the children at the center, watching you help them heal, I want that in our home, Maya. I want to build something with you that has nothing to do with business strategies or medical protocols." Maya squeezed his hand, emotion tightening her throat. "I'd like that," she managed finally. "Very much." Alexander brought her hand to his lips. "No contract this time. Just a promise." "Just love," Maya agreed softly. As they pulled into the medical school parking lot, Maya spotted Sarah waiting for them, her face lighting up as she waved. The future stretched before them, not neatly outlined in legal clauses or business plans, but rich with possibilities neither could have imagined that first night in Alexander's penthouse. "Ready?" Alexander asked, turning off the engine. Maya smiled at him, thinking of how far they had come and how far they had yet to go. With you? Always. They stepped out into the sunlight together, no longer bound by the terms of a bargain, but by the deeper contract written in their hearts, one with no expiration date, no escape clauses, and no limitations on how much love could grow between two people who started as strangers and found their way home to each other.